Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Accounting Conversations. So excited this week to be joined by Freeman Scott Bedwell. He is a CPA in Colorado, and he works at the amazing accounting firm Richey May. So excited to have you with me here. I met you a couple of years ago networking at BYU Idaho, but so excited to talk about the amazing things Richey May is doing, the amazing things you've done in your career, and to just talk a little bit about accounting, which we both love. So excited to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a great honor and a privilege to join you today. It's funny, like you said, how time flies when you meet someone 2 or 3 or 4 years previously, and you're like, who knows if I'll meet that person again? So pathways can have a tendency of crossing again. So it's a great honor to meet with you again today.
I love it. I love it. So do you want to give us a little introduction, maybe your career path, your schooling, and one question I always like to focus on, if you're a listener, you know this. Uh, I love asking the question, why accounting? We always get so much slack for being accountants and that we're boring, that we only do taxes when none of those things are true, right? So I love hearing the background story of how you found your way into the accounting world.
Yeah, so just kind of a brief intro. I'm Freeman. I'm a senior tax manager here at Richey May. Kind of some background. Originally, I was born and raised in Southeast Idaho in a small farming community. Um, Growing up, my parents did not farm potatoes, so people always assume if you're from Idaho that your parents must have a large potato farm. And I did work potato harvest all throughout high school, so I've seen probably billions of potatoes in my lifetime. My dad was a electronic technician for the FBI, and my mom was a school cook for most of my growing up years. So for me, I never had anybody in my family or close friend group who were accountants or CPAs whatsoever. I just grew up in a small community, loved to work, and thankfully for my parents, learned a culture of hard work at a very, very young age. I think looking back, I've always had a job probably from at least 10 or 11 years old up until now. And at sometimes I had 2 or 3 or 4 jobs, moving pipe, picking rock, working for a tree nursery. So yeah, just a lot of veteran jobs. Um, so I guess to answer your question of why accounting, after my church mission, I was kind of torn between three different degrees or opportunities. One being accounting, um, the other one being economics, and the third being psychology. So like I love the idea of helping people. So like in college, I took an intro class to all three. And psychology, it was very interesting, but I realized very quickly to be a psychologist, you have to be like 110% all the time because like you're helping people who are depressed, who are having life issues, marriage issues, and I don't know if I have the energy in my personal life to do that. So I kind of crossed that off the list. Loved the class and loved what I learned. In economics, like in high school, I loved the class and thought it'd be interesting to do it. In college, it was so fake. It was like so arbitrary and magical. And I'm just like, I'm a very literal person. Like if I have $10, I'm gonna save over half of it and then spend $1 or 2 on a candy bar. That's it. And they're like, oh, well, spend all your money on these bananas. And it's like, no, I'm not. And then in accounting, it made sense. I had an incredible teacher who just taught the very simplistic nature of accounting. So I finished that class. I said, well, I'll try another one. Took another class, and just after a while, it's like, well, this makes sense. So um, with that, took some more accounting classes and decided that accounting was for me. And now, 7.5 years later, I'm still in accounting. I chose tax in particular because while in school, I felt it was important to be specialized in something. I felt like, hey, if I was applying to a job and there was 10 applicants, and I was the only person that had a master's in tax, maybe I stand out in the crowd. And I think one thing to note as well, like going through that process like of finding a job and finding a career, like my timing in finding my jobs, it, it was always kind of bad timing. So like I graduated from BYU Idaho in December of 15 and went straight to Gonzaga in January of 16. So I graduated a year later in December of 16, and at that time, like most firms wanted to hire you either like in the summertime or the fall time. Like they didn't like most firms didn't want to hire you in January. So like I interviewed, I applied to like probably 15 or 20 firms, um, all the big four, top 15, small, dinky firms that no one knows at all, be it in Idaho, Washington, Colorado. And it was just tough. Like, it was not a market where like you could apply and you had 15 offers automatically. So for me at that time, I applied a lot of places. I had a friend of mine who had applied here, Richey May, in their audit group, and he's like, "Hey, they're hiring. You should apply here." And I'm like, "Sure. What the heck?" Um, I have I have nothing to lose, so I applied. Initially, I applied in our mortgage banking department on the tax side. Had some great interviews, but unfortunately, they had already filled the position. So like, hey, we can't hire you, but our other department, the alternative investments group is hiring. Do you want to interview over there? I was like, alternative investments? What's that? Like, I have no idea what it is. So I interviewed, and like I said, at that time, like I didn't know what a hedge fund was. I didn't know what a fund to fund was. I didn't like in college at Gonzaga. I took in a partnership class, but it was very like high level, like very high level. But going through that first interview, like I still vividly remember. So like I actually flew into Denver to interview with KPMG, and while I was in town, I was like, "Hey, can I come by the office like at Richey May and kind of just chat with you guys and kind of see the office?" And I had an interview with two people, and it was the first interview in like 2.5 months that I felt like both of them were being like very sincere. They were asking me about like who I was, what goals did I have in, like personally, like what goals in my career, where did I want to be in 5, 10, 20 years? And like obviously like those questions seem normal, but you can tell when someone like truly cares, like when they see you as an individual. And for me, it was the first time in like 2 months that I felt like I could be Freeman. Like I could be this random Idaho country bumpkin kid that had no tax experience. Um, I I had one prior internship with the Envision Healthcare here in Denver, but other than that, like, I had no experience, and they didn't care. They're like, "Hey, who are you? Like what can you bring to the team?" Like at that point, their team only had 10 people on the team in total. So I interviewed, went through it. I walked around, I was like, "Wow, like I feel like I'm home right now. Like I feel like I can be myself. I can unbutton my top button of my suit and not feel like I have to be this make believe robot going through this interview to beg for a job because I was graduating in less than a month and a half, and I had student loans at Gonzaga, so it's like I need to make money. Like I have to pay off my student loans as soon as possible, and it was a wonderful experience. And even with that, like during that process, like my pathway forward was still not ideal. Like I was graduated and I wanted a full time staff position role. And after going through the interview, they're like, "Hey, by the way, we've already issued an offer to another person, and and they um and they took it. So would you be open to an internship?" And it's like, internship? I have my bachelor's, I have my master's, like internship. Like it was hard. Like it was a really humbling time in my life to be like, "Okay, Freeman, are you gonna take this chance, come and be an intern at Richey May where there's no guarantee at the end of the 3 months that you'll have a real job with a salary to pay off your student loans?" And thankfully the good Lord humbled me and was like, "Hey, take the chance, go prove yourself, and have some fun." And it's been one of the best decisions or pathways that I've made in my career to take that chance and say, "Hey, what the heck? Like, there's there's nothing to lose here. So obviously very long-winded. I apologize. You'll probably find out that I'm a very long-winded person. So feel free to cut me off whenever I'm rambling too much.
No, I love all that so much. That's so good. Um, we love the long career stories here. It's important that we cover those. Wanted to go back to one thing you mentioned about when you were in school, about your professor, your first professor who taught accounting in a very simplified way. Do you have any specific or vivid memories of that class that really attracted you to accounting? Because, something big we talk about here on the podcast is the pipeline issues and the struggles we're having attracting new talent to the profession. Um, so, maybe is there something that stood out to you in that first class of like, oh, this professor did this really well, or they made this part of accounting really interesting? Because you hear from all the other business majors, oh, those first couple accounting classes, they're terrible. Like, you just got to survive through them. You got to somehow make it through. Where us accounting majors, we like love those classes, right? So maybe dig into that. Was there anything that professor did that maybe made that class more interesting or different?
I don't know if I'd say it was different, but I think one thing that really stood out to me with him and other professors that I had very early on is all of them had very different career paths. I had one professor who was the CFO of Coeur d'Alene Mines. The one that the my very first teacher that that I had my class with, I think he was like a CFO of a small like lumber company in Wyoming or some company in Wyoming. And what I loved about it was like several of them had not gone to the stereotypical big four or audit or tax. They had said, "Hey, I'm going to do this or this route." I think for me, like at a very young age, going through college, I was very just a cut and dry. Like I want a career or a job that is stable, that has a lot of options and opportunities, and that I'm not stuck forever in that role. And I think um, Professor Sadoff and others, I think, taught very, 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 very early on. It's like, hey, you are building a foundation block to learn accounting, debits and credits, whatever it may be. But how you apply this is going to be very, very different. Like, in my very close friend group, I've had friends who went to the big four that have come and gone. I've had friends who went to a smaller regional firm and then went to the big four. I've had others who immediately went into government, who went into like small local, like a small local milk company. And for me, it's been amazing and very important to see that each person's pathway has been great for them. Like each of them have had amazing careers. They've made great money. They've had great success, enjoyment, and each of them did different paths. And no one path was right or wrong. Like for me, going to Envision Healthcare and being a tax intern in corporate tax for 3 months was not wrong. Or me coming to Richey May and being here for 7.5 years and going up the pathway is not wrong. But for some people, like I have friends from Gonzaga who did their master's in taxation and never once used their degree in accounting because they found a different opportunity that they could utilize what they learned. Like I have one friend that runs an old folks home. So like he's not doing audit and tax, but he's using his accounting information to better his life and better his family. So I think it's important to kind of break the stereotypical you have to do like audit or tax, big four, non big four. Like it's so wrong. Like and I think each person, each professional, each student has to be honest with himself. Like for me, I was very honest at a young age. I do not want to live in certain states, period. So by doing that, that cut off options, and that's okay. I also said, hey, I do not want to work on Sundays. I don't want to work for a firm or a team where I'm just a cog in the wheel of a massive team. And I made key decisions that did block opportunities, but I did that with the decision and kind of calculated risk of, hey, like this is what I want. Like I'm flexible at doing A, B, and C, but I'm not flexible on one like on these two or three things. And I think sometimes, at least in my interactions with some students are afraid to make those decisions, or they haven't even thought about it. Like one of my first questions I asked young students or professionals that reach out, it's like, hey, where do you want to live? Like, do you want to live in Denver? Do you want to live in California? Do you want to live on the East Coast? Like, or or if they're married or date someone, hey, like, where does your spouse want to live? Because if your spouse does not want to live there, it's going to be really hard to be happy because they hate that state or they hate that firm. So it's like, I always tell kids, like, hey, have you told your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife, your partner, whatever the category, have you talked with them of what the expectations are if you are going audit or tax, or you are going public or private, or you are going to have overtime? And if you haven't, you better communicate it early on because in my career, like the partners, the people that I've seen successful in the career are the ones who are equally yoked with their partner, their spouse, their significant other, because they have clear communication of, hey, like in tax, like I tell all of the girls that I've dated or whatnot, I'm single, I'm not married right now, I have a girlfriend, but I'm always extremely blunt. In tax land, between January and April and late July through August, I'm going to be busy. Like I'm still going to make time to like for family stuff or for activities, but I'm going to have overtime. So if you can't deal with me working a busy week, this probably is not going to work out. And luckily, like my current girlfriend is very supportive. She understands my career, my passion, and we've made adjustments accordingly to help both of us be happy, if that makes sense. But I think like short story, understand what you want and where like what you want, where you want it, and then identify, okay, if you want to live in a certain area, okay, what are the options? is it is it public still? Great. Is it big four? Great. Like i I know, like I'm listening to a couple of your other podcast people, like I think a lot of them have been really good about not dogging on anybody. For me, I have great friends at the big four who have had amazing careers, but I also have other friends that, like, hey, I went for a year and I couldn't handle it, or hey, like for me, like I've never once had Big Four experience, so like I'm very biased towards a small regional or top 100 firms because that's what my experience is with. But I guess does that answer your question, or did you want me to clarify anything else on that?
No, you hit the nail right on the head. I I absolutely love everything that you covered. Um and I think you dug into something really important that we don't talk enough about in accounting is the versatility that an accounting degree gives you. You can go anywhere or do anything with an accounting degree. And I don't think we talk about that enough, right? Like some students will take their first or second accounting class, or maybe it's even further down the road when you start to get into the harder financial accounting classes where you really dig your heels into complex topics like diluted earnings per share. I say that because I kind of have an inside running joke with a couple of friends now that that's my go-to when I talk about hard financial accounting topics.
Absolutely.
But students, hit those hard sections and then they totally turn off to the idea that accounting is for them. We need to step away from that and show students that outside of the classroom, there are so many different avenues of accounting you can get into, and not just audit or tax. Like, for example, the firm that I work at is 100% remote, and I do a little bit of everything. I do some tax.
Hmm.
I do what we call CAS, which is cloud accounting services. So I do bookkeeping, payroll. There's 10 other things that fall into that CAS category that we provide for our clients. But either way, none of that stuff did I really see in the classroom, but it is so exciting. And I think if students just had a little bit of perspective outside of the classroom of how exciting accounting can be, it would really change the game. That was one thing that always stood out about Richey May and about you when you would present to us at BYU Idaho was this idea that accounting is interesting and fun, and that someone who's an extrovert and likes people can still be an accountant, right? Because in the movies, all the accountants are just, the guy in the back closet of an office who's doing the spreadsheets.
I think along those same lines, that versatility. I think when you're in an accounting class, it's very easy to have your horse blinders on. Like you're in the middle of this very hard topic, very hard subject, and it's so easy to lose that sight. I think in those moments you have to zoom out. Like going through college, it's 4 years. If you do a master's, it's 5 years. And like in the moment, you feel like this is so hard. This is so long. Is it really going to pay off? But really, like in a lifetime in a career, most of us are probably going to work for 30 to 40 years, hopefully, or less if you're really good at investing and you can retire young. Awesome, kudos to you. I'm a self I'm a self-diagnosed workaholic. I love working. Like I love my PTO. I don't take time off, but I truly love to work. Like it's been in my blood from a very, very young age to always be working. But I think in those hard moments, consciously and carefully take off the blinders. Say, hey, why am I doing this? And for me, like my parents taught me at a very, very young age, get all the education you can. Um, One small caveat: my mom growing up had special, was a special ed, and she overheard a teacher telling a student, "Hey, you can't go to college." So she assumed that because her friend couldn't go to college, she couldn't go to college. And 10 years later, she found out that student couldn't read, and that's why the teacher had told her friend that had told her friend she couldn't go to college. Like my mom never went to college. She raised 7 kids. She's a very intelligent person, but she taught us kids at a young age. Hey, I regret of not going to college, not getting an education. So learn from my mistake and get all the education you can. And for me, like that's what drove me to get my bachelor's, my master's. Like I wanted to have all the opportunities possible, like get my CPA, like all these different check boxes or different opportunities. Each of them open up a new door. And I think sometimes young professionals want to cut corners, like, oh, well, how do I cut line and get from here, from point A to point Z? And it's like, you can potentially cut a corner, but what are you missing in the middle? And I think sometimes we're so zoomed in or we're such in a huge rush to get something done that we fail to realize what are the options, like what opportunities or what moments can I learn going through diluted earnings or going through a complex audit or a technology class. Like I think sometimes we have to zoom out and remember, why am I here? Why did I choose to go into accounting? And for anybody who's listening, accounting is like it's not always the sexiest major, but if you truly ask around and see other people, it truly can be a sexy major. It has great opportunities and hundreds, if not thousands of, I guarantee thousands of options. Like you, like 40 years ago, if you were going into a job, you do one thing for 40 years. But I've had so many of my coworkers and people who have done 5 or 6 different things in accounting in their career. So like you're not stuck doing just an audit, just a tax, just cash books. And for some people, if they do it and they love it, that's fine. So like I think a lot of it comes down to zooming out and being honest and saying, hey, what do I want out of my career? And like for me, like I made a very conscious decision early on. I wanted to get my bachelor's, my master's, and my CPA because I did not want to look back 10 or 20 years and say, oh, I should have done my master's, or oh, I should have had my CPA, and now I can't do this job. So for me, I was very conscious about making decisions of what classes I took, what education I got, what certifications I got, because I did not want to have a regret saying, well, I should have, could have, would have. And I think some people, like I said, like some folks try to rush through certain things. Take a deep breath. Like, don't overstress it. And I think also with that versatility, it's like as you network and meet a lot of different people, professionals, it helps you to kind of see, like, oh, I had no idea I could be a remote cast person, or oh, I had no idea I could be a state auditor, or oh, I had no idea I could be a bookkeeper for a milk company and make really good money. Like the options are limitless. The one thing I tell young professionals all the time, I can do tax anywhere. I can do tax on the East Coast, the West Coast, internationally. The one thing I can't control is the people. So, whatever you choose to do, whether it's a big firm, a small firm, government, not, find a company or a firm that you truly like are bought into the culture and who they are. And for me, like I've stayed at Richey May for 7.5 years because I found a people on day one when I interviewed where I felt, oh, this is different. They care about me. They care about my goals, my vision of what I want to be, and even better, like my vision at that time was very like short sighted of like I want to do A, B, and C, but I've had key mentors and people around me who have helped me take off blinders and say, hey, you can do a whole lot more than just what your small little vision of being an Idaho country bumpkin. Like you are way more than who you think you are. And I think having people or having a firm who can help you expand your vision, expand your options or opportunities, but most importantly, having a culture and a firm that you truly can back. Like, obviously, not every day is going to be a walk in the park. Like accounting is a job's a job. Like, you're going to have high days and low days, but at the end of the day, like with each year, can you say, hey, I am proud of who I work for or what I'm doing? And I think if you can answer those questions year over year, you've done, you've made a good decision. And sometimes you make a decision and you realize, oh, this is not for me. And that's okay. Like, there is no shame in coming to a firm or coming to a company, working for 6 months, a year, 2 years, and be like, hey, tax is not for me. Hey, audit's not for me. Hey, big four or what or regional or accounting overall is not for me. Like I've known plenty of people in business who did accounting grow like in their early career and left and did other roles where they're not directly using their accounting degree, but they're still using the principles of what they learned. So I think like in our modern economy, in our modern workforce, don't be stuck in a job or a career you don't love. Like on LinkedIn, like all of my posts, I say love what you do. I truly love what I do. And people roll their eyes like how the heck can you love tax? I love tax. I love alternative investments. I love hedge funds. Like I love to geek out on those kind of on those topics. And that didn't come on just day one of coming. It came from putting in a lot of effort and a lot of work. And I think going back to that point of like of the shortcuts, you like it's very rare that you're going to be able to shortcut yourself into success. Like success comes from diligently working towards goals, and I think making sure those goals are measurable and kind of like in shorter bite-sized pieces. Like obviously everybody wants to make $1 million someday or retire young, But to get to that goal, those people had to make 50, 100, or 1,000 smaller measurable goals to get to that ultimate goal of retiring young and not having to work because they made a great decision investing or whatnot, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I absolutely love all of that. And I think it can go back to something that's very applicable to students too, is don't just go through the motions in your accounting classes. Like, actually try to dig in. And who cares about your GPA? Care about actually learning the material. Your GPA will follow suit if you actually care about developing the accounting skills that actually matter. Um, I think we focus way too much on test scores and GPA and, oh, am I the top of my class? When really the question should be, am I developing skills and getting to know people that are going to help me the rest of my career? Because that's what ends up really mattering. Um, I'd
Absolutely.
love to ask.
Like,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
just one comment on the GPA. Like for me, like in my career, I've probably interviewed at least 100, 200 people probably in the last 7.5 years. And I do look at a person's GPA just out of curiosity, but I have hired people that have low GPAs because they have extracurriculars, they have jobs that they worked. Not everybody is blessed to be able to say, hey, I'm going to go through school, not have a job, not do anything else, and just be razor focused. So if your GPA is a 4.0, great, but you also be able, like, in an interview, better be able to be personable to tell me who you are, why should I hire you? Because like I'd rather have a 3.5 person GPA who's personable, who's worked going through college, be it fast food, bartending, whatever, than a person that has a 4.0 who's book smart and is very, very smart, but has no personal interaction skills. So yeah, I love that. Like, it is important to do good in school. Like, you have to understand like the fundamentals and the foundation blocks. But at least for me, in my experience, I am not going to judge you like 100% off your GPA. I'm going to judge you off who are you as a person. Are you friendly? Are you like? Did you have other jobs going through school? Like, it's way more than just a GPA to me.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. So going into that a little bit, or going more into your experience with Richey May, you've been with them for 7.5 years, which, from a public accounting perspective, is very unheard of very often, right? You see people go into KPMG or EY, they go for a year and a half, 2 years, and they're like, all right, I'm out to industry, or I'm going to go to a smaller firm, or, maybe they're saying I'm going to be done with accounting totally, right? What what makes Richie May, apart from the people, like you've already explained, what are some things that make Richie May special and have made you want to stay? And, you're already a senior tax manager at 7 years, which is impressive. Very, very impressive. What does the path to partner look like at Richie May? And is that something you ever see yourself doing?
All very good questions. So, I guess outside the people, for me, it's always been the opportunities. So, when I started as an intern, there was 10 people on my tax team in total, including and three of those were and three of the 10 were interns. So we had 10 people at that time. AI, alternative investments. We like our team had started here at Richie May back in 2014. So the team was very young. Our partners had come over from Rosting Cass that had gotten bought out by KPMG, and they didn't want to go to the Big Four. Like, hey, let's come to Richie May. It's like, at Richie May, like, one thing that's special about us is we're very niched. So we have three primary niches or specialties that we focus on. We focus on mortgage banking, we focus on alternative investments, and we have a technology and cybersecurity practice. So we are very specialized. We don't have all the 10, 20 options of what we do. We've found our kind of our sweet spots in the market of what people want. So for me, like in alternative investments, on day one, I had no idea what a hedge fund was, but it was very interesting. It's very interesting to see a general partner who has an idea, says, "Hey, I want to buy the debt of a state, and I'm going to raise capital, buy their debt, and earn interest off what they do." So in a hedge fund, the options of how you invest is limitless. And it's like for me, every single one of my clients, I have clients that are $1 billion entities. I have clients that are several million. And I have a couple that are just barely $500,000 in capital. And they're all so different that every single day I touch I touch different, like a trader fund, an investor fund, a passive investments, that every day is so new. And in tax, the one blessing or curse is it's always changing. Congress is constantly changing the rules of carried interest or different rules that every single year, bless them, they're changing practices that affect us, and thus we have to kind of adjust our practices. So like no day is the same, no year is the same. So for me, in 7 years, some people say, "Oh, well, after 7 years, isn't it boring? Like you've done the same thing for 7 years." Like, no, like, every single year I get new clients, or clients change their strategy. So having that change, and that the opportunities to see a lot of different styles of entities is fun to me. I I have some clients that are very quote unquote business, which is like, hey, let's just talk business, nothing else. I have other ones that are very personable, where we talk about our families or kind of our out of work environment. So I think like the opportunities, like being in a small team of 10 people in the last 7.5 years, we've gone from 10 people in tax to being over 50 people in tax. So
Wow.
we've had, and like that's all organic growth. Like we're not buying out, like Richey May has not bought out any other firms or any other groups. It's purely been, we have great clients who open up new entities. They say, hey, Richey May is our auditor or our tax people, you may be interested in it. So like, over that 7.5 years, we've grown and expanded our range of clients all over the U.S. And like for me, it's like I have very few clients that are actually here in Colorado. I have clients all over the country. I talk. We have emails, team calls, whatnot. So like it's very rare for me to see an actual client in person. I've only ever met one client in person in my entire career. All, it, all of my interactions have always been via emails or phone calls. So it's just like it's kind of that standard practice in AI, where it's like, hey, as long as they trust us and know that we're the best of the best at what we do, they don't care to see me in person or fly me out to their office. It's a waste of money. Like, why bother? And
Wow,
I guess,
that's really cool.
and I guess
Everything
just
that
like,
Richey May is doing.
I guess just one more thing, kind of like the thing that like this, what's special or what keeps me. It's like over those years, like it's been very refreshing to see kind of how our partners like they've been very conscious of like of investing in technologies and resources to kind of make our lives better. So like in those first couple, like 2 or 3 years, it was full on growth mode. It was like, hey, we're building a book of business. We have to prove ourselves. But after we got through that kind of that initial cycle, we're still growing. But they're like, hey, like what can we do to make Freeman's life better? Like so that Freeman's not wanting to quit tomorrow because he's working so much. So like we've invested in improved tax softwares, and I think also another cool thing that we do in AI is we have an AI transformation team. So it's a team of 4 or 5 people that all they do all day every day is look at, hey, how can we change these work papers, or what technologies are we not using that could be useful. And the person who leads out on it was at EY for 3 years, and like I guess previous to EY, he was an intern with me at Richey May. He left to do his master's, went to EY in their in their technology practice and came to back because he saw what we had as an intern. Hey, like Richey May's got a great culture. I want that culture in my life. He came back, and right now he's building out a team to kind of help build out that technology practice to help make all of our audit and tax teams' lives much more productive and enjoyable.
That for me is especially exciting. That's one of the other avenues I get to take part of in my current internship is implementing new practice management softwares and new softwares that are going to automate and make our firm better. And I think it means a lot when you see a firm doing that for you because it costs money and it takes a lot of time to put those processes in place. They are worth it in the end, but it does take a little bit to get them going and to get the ball rolling down that technology path, and especially with technology changing so much so fast,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like, oh, we're about to implement this, but in 2 years where's the technology going to be again, right? um
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so that's really
100%.
exciting. Yeah, yeah. So kind of going back, what does the partner path look like at Richey May as compared to maybe like a big four or whatnot, right? Like I have a lot of students listening to the podcast who are trying to decide, do I go to a small firm? Do I go to a medium firm? Do I go to a tiny firm where I'm going to be, one of three or four people? And a big question is, what is the partner path? Because I think 20, 30 years ago, the partner path at a big four was like 7 years. 7, 8 years, you could be partially an equity holder at a firm, which in my mind, that's where you can really start to make real money, right? Is once you have equity. Um,
Yeah.
and now you
Yeah.
look
So
at it
like,
and
go ahead.
oh, I
Sorry.
was just gonna say, and now you look at it and a lot of these bigger firms, it's between 15 and 20 years, depending on when the people above you retire. Because if the firm's not growing, you're just
Mm-hmm.
waiting for someone else to retire, right? Um, so what does that look like at Richey May? And do they have a culture that really invites people to stay for the long haul to become an equity holder at their firm?
Yeah. So I think along those lines, like you're definitely right. Um, every firm's pathway to partner is going to be different, and I think going back to go back to your one question, like for students deciding if they want to make partner, like if you would ask me when I was an intern at Richie May, do I want to make partner? At that time, I was like, probably not. Like, I don't want that stress or that anxiety of it. But over the last 7 years, or I think probably about halfway through my career, I realized, like by observation of looking at the core partners or the directors that I worked with, like who are they as men and women? Like, do they have a good life, a professional life, their personal life, like as individuals and with their family? And I saw very clearly, it's like, hey, like these men and women are great people. They work hard and they make a good living, and they also are functioning family. Like they function. They're leaving work to go to their kids' performances. They're taking time off to travel or whatnot. And I realized quickly, it's like, oh, like this scary partner position is still scary. Like there's still a lot of like risk and a lot of responsibility. But they taught me at a very early part of my career. It's like it's possible if you're willing to put the effort in. And I think going back to my initial comment at the very beginning, it's like when I looked at a firm, like at firms that I was interviewing at, like I looked for a place where I could grow my entire career. Like my dad worked for 30 years for the FBI. He had one job his entire career, and I realized in accounting that's very rare and probably is not going to happen. But for me, I looked at it and said, hey, like if I love this place, could I work 30 years here? And I kind of got the lucky card or the blessed card where I found a place initially that just was what I wanted. And I think for the opportunities, there's definitely opportunities here. Like I'm definitely like making director or making partner is in my ultimate goal in the next couple of years. and I've had key discussions with people who can help me get there. But a lot of it goes down to like having core mentors or core people in your corner. Like as I've grown my career, I've communicated with the key people. Hey, so and so, this is where I want to be in my career. Like I want to be a partner someday, hopefully running Richey May. Like I love Richey May in a way that I want to keep Richey May's culture. Like obviously, I want us to grow to be a larger firm, but I also want us to have a culture where people truly love what they do. They're proud of who we are, what we represent, who we service, and in my experience, the one way that you can do that, like the way to maintain or to have that opportunity, is by growing in positions of influence. And as I've gone from an intern up to a senior manager, I've had opportunities to maintain and influence key decisions. And for me, luckily, I have a very supportive partner group who all have similar ideas and, like, obviously different backgrounds, different upbringings, but all the partners at Richey May want to have a good life. They want to provide well for their families and provide opportunities. And because they want to provide opportunities, they're making opportunities for multiple people to grow their career. And I think, like, for all of us, I don't care where you are in your career. Like for me, as a senior manager, my biggest joy in my career that I have is seeing the staff that I hired 3 or 4 years ago who are now seniors, managers, and growing in their careers. So as all of us, I don't care where you're at, like as all of us, as we expand and grow in our careers, we also have to like keep an eye on both sides. Like obviously I'm still focused on making partner. Like that's what I want. But I'm also still focused on, hey, what can I do to get A, B, and C, these four people that I have absolute respect and loyalty to, what can I do to help get them to that next step? And for some of them, their pathway to making senior, making manager, senior manager is going to be different and take longer or shorter. So, like, I think some people ask me, well, Freeman, 7.5 years senior manager, how the heck did you do it? I was aggressive with it, and I had great people that that had opportunities there, but not everybody has to go at my speed. And there are some situations like or moments that I wish that I might have slowed down a little bit on certain areas. Now, obviously, hindsight's 2020. I'm proud of what I've done and where I've come, but going back to like that zooming out, like don't be in a huge rush to make this big decision of making partner and lose out or miss out on some core memories, core experiences, um, opportunities to kind of lay the foundation blocks. And like I said, like one person or persons may go right up that staff, intern, senior, manager, and that's great. And like, there's nothing like I think the sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but I think like it goes back to what I tell our interns, like on day one. Hey, interns, I want you to look every single week at, hey, how am I today comparable to last week and each month? And I tell them, it's like, hey, if we have 3 interns, I am not judging you against the other 2 interns. I'm saying, how have you changed and become better over this month or 3 months being here? And I think we all have to be very careful to not say, oh, well, my career is a failure because I was a senior for 7 years or 8 years, because there's people that will be a senior for 4, 5, 6 years, and then maybe their next step in, like their next steps up, will be much faster. So don't compare yourself to, hey, like my career does not look like Freeman's or Joe Schmo's or whoever. That's okay. That's the beauty of a career. It's like a career in accounting is like a snowflake. They're all different. They're all beautiful, and they all can be changed and transformed based upon what you decide. But if you choose to focus purely on comparing yourself to what someone else is doing, your snowflake may break. And you'd be like, what the heck happens? Like, well, you were so focused on keeping up with so and so in school or so and so's career path that you did not build your snowflake or your opportunities to the fullest potential. And I think with anything, like I'm a huge advocate for mentors. Like I think it's important to have multiple mentors. It's important to find people you trust and people that can give it to you straight and say, "Hey, this is a bad decision," or "Hey, this decision is shortcutting or taking it." Like if you do it, I'll support you in it, but just know these could be the outcomes. And have you thought about it? And for me, luckily, like as an intern, I from an intern up to senior manager, I've had the great blessing of having multiple people at multiple levels who have listened to me, they've understood what I want, and they've opened doors and provided opportunities that would not be available if I had not asked for it or if they had not helped me get there. So make the pathway easier for others. Don't make them suffer because you suffered. Provide insights. Like for me, like I had nobody in my family or my inner circle that were CPAs or accountants. So my pathway at the beginning was very kind of black and white, dark. So now, like my goal is to help anybody who's in accounting or thinking of accounting to see what are the options and how can it transform their overall life and their career as well.
I think everybody needs to pause when they hear this part of the episode and go and write this down, because that is one of the most essential things of any career, regardless of if you're in accounting, is find mentors and use them to help you climb the ladder, because doing it alone, not only are you going to make way more mistakes, but you are not going to develop the way that you need to. And I think that you covered that is so special. And thank you so much for mentioning that, because we all need to be focused on that. You need to find good mentors, and you need to go and attack opportunities when they've been given to you, just like you have, right? When there have been places that you could step in and move up, you attacked it and you went at it. And that's the attitude you have to go in. And you also chose a place that is nurturing and that has people that want you to grow. If you're somewhere where the people above you are not helping you learn and helping you grow, you need to get out of there, because that is not the right place to be. Um, but that
Absolutely,
is just gold.
100%.
That's gold. Thank you so much, Freeman, for sharing that. That is, I think that's the climax, the epitome of what this episode needs to be, is what you mentioned there. So thank you so much. We only
Of
got
course.
like 2 or 3 more minutes here, but if you had like one piece of advice, maybe like one sentence, and maybe you just shared it with us, but if you had one little piece of advice to give to young accounting professionals and young accounting students right now, what would that advice be?
I actually have three because three is my lucky number. So first off, use your student card. Use your student card for all that's worth. Like reach out to people on LinkedIn, ask them questions. Like once you lose that student card, it's not that it's hard, but people like most people are so willing to help students to answer their questions, give them insights, feedback. Number two, network often and early. I like people assume that I'm an extrovert. I am very, very introverted. I am not an extroverted person, but learning how to network and get to know people at a very young age, or at least be comfortable with the uncomfortable. It's not fun to go to a career fair and shake hands with people you don't know, but network early and often. It's never like, even as a freshman in accounting, it's never too early to network at meet the firms, at weekly account society meetings, on LinkedIn, whatever. And my third one is don't burn bridges. Like in our global economy right now, you never know when you may work with somebody else in the future. So don't burn bridges. Don't quit a job and leave on a bad note. You never know when your path is gonna cross with somebody. In my current job, I have three coworkers who worked at prior jobs with each other, and because they were great coworkers at a prior job, they were they were very willing and able to refer, hey, let's hire so and so. He was great or she was great at our old firm. So once again, use your student card, network often, and do not burn bridges because it will. I guarantee you, it will haunt you later in your life if you burn a bridge.
I think those are all amazing pieces of advice. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Freeman, thank you so much for your time. This has been an amazing episode. I'm so excited to share this with my audience. Um, if my listeners want to connect with you, network with you, get to know you, where's the best place they can do that?
Probably LinkedIn. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. Like I do my best to accept all invites, or if people reach out for questions or resumes or whatnot. Um, um, LinkedIn's probably the best place to do that. So
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Can't wait to stay in touch with you and continue to get to know you. But really appreciate everyone listening too. And we will hear from y'all next week.